All right, thank you very much. All right, so I will call the joint school board meeting to order for February 14th, 2022. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Calling it to order at 6:36. And with a roll call, Brian Winslow,
I'm here.
Chrissy Berry, Amanda Roy, here, Sarah Carey, here, Susan Levinson, here, Kathy Brosnan is not here, Carol is not here, Megan Sabasco, and Lori Kilbert here. All right, excellent. So now we have time set aside for public comments. Is this a member of the public? Nope. All right, Carol is here now at 6:37. Thank you, Carol. All right, so we can go ahead and take a peek at the minutes to approve the minutes from or make adjustments to the minutes from January 10th. I wasn't here on this day, so I'll rely on the rest of you for any suggestions or changes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from January 10th.
I'll second that.
Okay, great. Any discussion?
Oh, it's so
inaudible. I don't know if you have the information.
Yeah, it sounds like the video disappeared 27 minutes and 9 seconds in and then reappeared later.
I can go back and look at my notes. again.
we did have some motions in that period, I believe, that I had a motion by Brian, seconded by Kathy, with a 8-0 vote regarding the BA position. I just had some notes on the, as we went through the particular lines. There was a note about checking on additional revenue.
How should, do you want to go back and listen and see if you can?
If
Does it-
the out,
Yeah.
I can check and see if you can listen. I can have Mr. Stanley review it, see if he can get the audio to speak up somehow. Otherwise, I'll go back and look at my notes and try to fill them in via that way.
Do we know if we had no video?
It looks like it
The computer
disappeared.
died for about 7 minutes.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what that means.
All right, so we're not going to have any audio video of that, but
Correct.
we can put together some notes from that. Do we want to defer voting on these until next month when we piece together this 7-minute?
Yeah,
chunk?
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. All right, can we add those to our agenda for our March meeting? With hopefully some of the gaps filled in from Mr. Burns' notes or Ms. Levinson's notes as well. That would be great. All right, committee reports. Do we have any committees meet over the last month?
Nope. That was one of the things we did talk about, was policy, getting together, you know.
Yes.
Same folks, but it's been too busy.
Yeah.
With deliberatives and so forth.
For sure. I know we talked about that in the December meeting too. Who are we looking at to be on the joint policy committee reps? Are we looking at?
It was me, weren't you?
I think I was in there
I think it was discussed with the policy committees from each
from
Of the
each of
board.
the
were
boards.
done
Okay,
together, I
so
think.
who is
Would be
that?
Carol and I, and I'm
Carol,
not sure
okay.
for Northwood.
Carol. Susan, and then it would be Miss Carrie and myself from Northwood. All right.
I did find a page of notes, so.
Perfect, perfect. So what I can do is I'll send out an email to everyone see if we can coordinate some schedules to do that. Miss Carey is not going to be running in March. Her interim term has ended, so I'm not sure who will have replaced us after that. Who will have to replace Miss Carey after that, but we may have to just roll with one Northwood rep for a little while until we get that sorted and squared away. And we can move on to the business administrator's report.
Okay, so that report starts on page 7. Page 7 starts with your revenue report. So this is your district apportionments coming in, and as you can see, we've had some of that fixed. Your previous one had some discrepancies in there, and we're cleaning that up. There's still some more to be done in here and get situated. You can see that there's been some miscellaneous income coming in, and then you have your pre-fund, your preschool fund that's showing some revenues coming in. So we are having more revenues in than what was raised and appropriated. So that will be an additional return at the end of the year with that. So on page 8, you move to your monthly expenditure report summary. And I'm going to go over some of this detail with you. Some of the things that you have to look at is it's showing that you have negative balances available. I did not run these reports. This is a report that I had asked to have run, so they ran it a little different than what I had done in the past. So what it's showing is all of the bill backs from the districts are also included in this. So when it says regular education is negative 70,000, that's because they haven't been billed back to the districts. Similarly, student services has that same situation. So again, when the reports are run next, I'm gonna be clear it's important that the board sees the funds and sees what's going on, but that kind of confuses the situation a little more. So I'm gonna be able to break that up for you in a little more detail on the detailed expenditure report. So if there are no major questions on page 8, when I get to page 9, I'm going to start breaking some things up and try to highlight some of the reasons you see some just what looks like negative balances. So on page 9, the first half of the page, it's your at-risk and your occupational therapy services. Those are your personnel reports for your coordinator that you share between the 2 districts, your special ed coordinator that's shared between the 2 districts, and the OT for Nottingham, because that's still currently billed out of the SAU. So what you're seeing is a lot of negatives, negative 70,000 there, and another close to negative 70,000. That's because they're billed back. So it's not actually a negative to the district, but it's showing up because we didn't budget for it in the SAU like that. So that's something to keep in mind and I'm going to track through this a little bit more for you. If you look down a little further underneath the health insurance for the superintendent, it says it's negative 28,000. And that's because under that line, you had not budgeted for a family plan for your prior superintendent. So with me having a family plan, it's showing that there's negative, but then if you look down 2 lines below that health insurance, you'll see a positive 26,000 because it's billing the correct line and not the line that, if you look at my number, the superintendent is 00. And what's happening is my insurance is coming out of the correct line, which is 00, but it was somehow put into 03 line. So it's just not billing the correct line, but that is the correct amount.
So the journal entries were done to 03, but they should just be journal probably up into 00 or.
Well, you don't want to change the entry because you want it to tag. So they've actually corrected it. So it is billing the correct line and not the incorrect line. So it's because you don't want to bill the 003 because that's not actually my line. So they're billing the 00 because that's my line so that it's into the correct line.
But it was budgeted in the 03.
Yes, that's correct. It got placed in there somehow. There is another additional error that I found on this page, and I'm working with them, and we're going to get it fixed prior to it sent over. So if you go all the way down to the second to last line on that. It's retirement for the superintendent. They have my retirement in at the wrong rate. Because I used to be the director of student services, the state still has me listed as a 21.02%. It's not, it's the 14%. They got to fix that. So what's budgeted is the 16,872. That's the correct number. But they encumbered the 21%. So they're gonna unencumber that and not make sure it doesn't go to the state. If that makes sense. Because the only one in the superintendent gets a lower rate, but the rest are at the higher teacher rate. And that's what I was the higher teacher rate. So it just needs to get transferred over. On the page 10 of this, I want to point out, we're currently working on this, and I did share this. We have office forms and supplies. We're currently overdrawn by $1,120.55. It is line number, well, it doesn't have a line, but it is 10-23-20-56-100-00. The reason we're overdrawn, and I'd mentioned this before, we had Amazon packages come in for Stratford. And because that wasn't paid in time, it wound up putting a lock on all of our Amazon accounts. So I authorized the SAU to pay the Stratford account so that we could unlock all the schools' accounts. And Stratford is going to reimburse us for that. It just hasn't come in yet. We sent them the bill. They know. I spoke with the superintendent because it was all their stuff. It came in right after it came in. It was ordered by June, but it came in, rolling in. So it just didn't get paid by them in time. So that will be squared away.
But they wouldn't know to pay it because they didn't get it.
That we did get it to them though. Yeah, you're right. They didn't know at the time because it was still an SAU 44 purchase at the time.
Yeah.
So we got it all itemized. They got the bill. They know they have to pay it, and they're working towards getting it back to us. We just worked that through. But I had to get that done, or else we wouldn't have had any Amazon orders. Then you go down halfway through the page, you'll start to see the same thing that we discussed earlier with you have your all ed facilitator. It shows as a negative in here. And that tracks through in multiple different areas, such as the health insurance, the retirement, the FICA. So you're showing negatives that aren't really a part of the SAU budget because they'll be billed back. So it's not putting the SAU into that situation. So there's 3 lines. So if you look at the all ed facilitator, that's a negative 49,000. You'll also see some health insurance costs that are associated with the 00. And you'll also see some of the retirement for the all ed facilitators in there. So in the FICA, those are all non-negative numbers, if that makes sense. Typically, when I ran this report, I masked out the bill back features because it confuses it a little bit, because it doesn't give you a realistic value of where the SAU's at. And this was not masked. So on the next page, so page 11. And if you do have any questions about what I'm sharing, please let me know. I'm just trying to highlight the big things. So on page 11, you'll see there's a couple new numbers in there. The salary for the financial manager shows a negative of $24,772.46. That's about a quarter of the way down. And then there's corresponding negative numbers, such as the health insurance for that individual. And then there is also the retirement. All that stuff has been adjusted for the hiring of that, and I'll get into that a little bit more, but that's why you see that. I also want to let you know that, and we may need to discuss this in more detail down the line. So if you look at computer maintenance agreements, you can see we budgeted $17,130. The bill came in at 29. That bill was inaccurate. I put Mr. Stanley on that to figure out why it was so high, and there was an error. It was paid, but it was an error. It should have only been 21,000. So what is going to happen is iVision is not willing to give us a check back for that amount, but they're willing to credit next year's account. So what I would propose is that since Northwood is going to be staying with iVisions for next year, that be looked at as one of the things that Northwood would owe Nottingham during the separation, the portion of that $7,000 that was credited. So that would come back to the Nottingham in a credit. That's the only way we, like, at the separation, that's the only thing I can look at, like, that's an owed asset. Because if iVisions won't return the check and we can't get them to return it, I see that as a solution to fix, because we found the error. So now what we'd say is there's that $7,000 credit that's going to be awarded. So Nottingham would be owed a portion of that, and that could be paid for out at the end.
Yeah, the credit is basically an asset that we just will keep
That's
track
correct.
of at the separation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
that-
it was their mistake though?
yes, they gave
And
us,
they won't return the money?
they are returning it, but not in a form of a check.
So they're gonna credit our next bill.
Yes.
They're gonna probably increase it by 7.
It just seems interesting to me that they won't return the money as it was.
I-
It was their
I-
mistake.
Yeah, and I asked Mr. Stanley to get involved in it and more, and I will also, but it's been clear that it was made pretty clear that they weren't going to, but I'm gonna continue to pursue it, but in the meantime, I think like that's a viable solution as well.
If the board is willing, could we see a breakdown at our next meeting? I don't want to belabor it tonight. What happened there? Why do we think it's 17 and they think it's 21 and that yet they billed us for 29? So if
It
we could-
was 21.
Mhm.
Mr. Waring did not update the account. Mr. Stanley did share with him that it was 21.
Okay,
In the budget, it only got put in at 17, but it should have been 21. I don't know why we were charged 29, but we know that was inaccurate. We looked at all the contracts. It was charged. We paid the bill because we saw that. It was something that was approved prior to me. And then I said, wait, why was it? And then we
Yeah.
went back and looked at it, and
I think just for all of us, it would be helpful understanding as we roll forward exactly what the module costs are this year, so you can have a better understanding for both of us.
Yeah.
What we're going to be billed next year.
Mhm.
If, so I would be interested in seeing how they arrived at the 21, and what we're paying for each module, and
I can work on
so
that.
that would help all of us if the board is, open to that.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds good.
Okay, I'll work on that. And so right above that, you'll also see the contracted interim business manager. That number hasn't really changed. We do have a large encumbrance on that. But we haven't been utilizing it as much. My hope is to be able to get that utilized a little more now that deliberative is over, helping Mr. Ford is still willing to help us. But where he wasn't able to get stuff ready for deliberative, I didn't have time to do that with him. I needed to get deliberative stuff. Now that we're back, I'd like someone to do that 30,000-foot view for us to help find any pitfalls. So I'll be working with him as well as Mr. Waring, if Mr. Waring can give any more time. So that number is a large number. I don't think we'll use all 42,000. But that was based on Mr. Ford being with us a little more often than he is right now.
So are there any additional invoices out there that need to be booked against this,
Not
or?
right now. This is up to date.
Okay,
So that brings us to the page 12. And what page 12 is saying is currently we're our available balance is negative $9,348. What I will tell you is that's not correct. Going through and looking at taking out all the negative things that are billed back, your current balance for the SAU is around $187,000 positive. That is because of two reasons. We don't have staff in special ed or in BA now. So those are the two reasons. We went without an assistant director. We lost our special ed administrator here. And then we haven't had our BA at all. So with those factors, you're seeing 3 salaried positions that are going unused, and that's why there's such a large return. So that will be available. I don't foresee us going much below that number. I actually think that number at 187 is going to go up because I have $40,000 in encumbrances that I don't think are going to be spent all the way. And I'll have some additional news for you when we get the personnel regarding additional not use of funds. So
you're saying you think the current balance net of bill backs they're tracking through here is 187? Okay.
oh yes, I can account for 187, but I will tell you it's gonna be closer to 250,000.
So can I ask just for tracking some of this? So the revenues, the bill backs are not included in revenues, like, because these are just our appropriations for the SAU budget. So the bill backs are not
They're in your local operating budget.
considered like part of this as revenue to, like, because it just kind of evens out.
Correct.
Okay.
So the bill backs are not in your revenue. They're part of the local operating. They're already in your budgets, but this kind of lets you see the cash flow that's going through the
Right,
SAU.
But it
lines.
never comes in as revenue to you because it just doesn't show that way on this.
Right.
Just try to, for my own understanding of how it goes. Thank you.
Because they're not truly SAU positions. The only the revenues that account are what's raised for just the SAU. That's what shows up in your revenues.
So the funds are sitting, or the expenses are sitting in the individual budgets. But the checks are cut out of the SAU, so that sometimes hits the unassigned fund balance, which is all just one big pool to sort of skate the cash flow.
Correct.
And then bill backs are done, so that comes in as revenue to the SAU.
Yes. But not in the grand scheme of revenues as you
Right.
normally see them.
So it's in the reimbursement, an
Mhm.
expense reimbursement.
And is that just done at the end of the year,
The-
not periodically?
No, it would typically, with a full business office, be done monthly.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes quarterly, but monthly. It just hasn't been done because we don't have the people that would be able to do it on a regular basis who have done that in the past. Which is why I worked to bring Mr. Carlin back to try to get him, who had done stuff like that, to come back and work with us because he knew the systems and he knew what was going on.
So for right now, I'm thinking now into our local budgets, when we start to look at those. So those expenses have not yet come out of our local budget. So
Correct.
we will be seeing impacts to
I
the
love-
unassigned fund balances that are estimated there.
Correct.
And they'll be fairly material.
Yes, they will. Yeah, and I'm working with them on the Nottingham ones to get them sent to you tomorrow, so you can at least preview them before the meeting. Because I looked at Nottingham's today in more detail. After reading this, I said, there's things that need to be corrected.
Right.
So, that brings us to the preschool revenue, and you'll see the apportionment and coming in. There's a holdover, if you look at the revenue up top, which is page 14, of a $5 revenue. I couldn't figure out what was going on there. That was a bill from last year that was owed. Someone who had the scholarship owed $5. And so it's tracked through. What it's currently set up as is preschool tuition parents now. And it's not set up by district. It's just all the tuition that comes in and it will get portioned out as it's supposed to. Currently, we have 10,200 that's come in. We are anticipating quite a bit more to come in.
That's what I was just gonna ask too. This is only year to date, so do we have a
Some people,
expected?
yeah, no, we don't, because some people pay all at once. Some people will pay their entire years all at once. Some
Mhm.
people pay monthly. So I don't have an anticipated yet. That's something I asked them to try to determine for me quickly. This was just cleaned up. We had we had money in our Cheddar Up account, which is how people pay online, and nobody knew how to access it. Like, because the people who were experienced at it left.
Right.
So we're getting that transferred over now, and that's we're in the process of trying to get a better determination. As I had said, February and March, I was really hoping that by March we were getting cleaner in February, but by March I'd have a better anticipation for you. So when we go to the detailed expenditure report, so for the preschool, you'll start to see what I want to point out is a couple errors at the top, or not errors, but things significant to be looking at. You'll see that your child find coordinator position shows a balance of $7,400. That is correct. That is anticipated because you didn't fill that position. all the lines that correspond with that, like health insurance and FICA and retirement, those are the same thing. You will have a savings in your dental line. Somehow that number got brought in. And that's an error. That's not the correct number. It shouldn't have been budgeted that high. I'm not quite sure why the dental was that high at 13,000. That's not the correct number. I can't tell you how that number got in. That was put in the budgeting process before. It's an error. It should have been much less. But you'll also see a $43,000 negative and then a $9,000 negative and then a positive 66. It's because all of the health insurance for this preschool got put into that one lump sum, and then it's being billed out to the correct lines
The one lump sum.
of $66,086.69. That's the health insurance that was budgeted. But what's happening, just like my health insurance, it was budgeted under the 003, but it really should have been a small portion under 01 and 02. So you'll see that 01 and 02 are overdrawn, but 003 is not being drawn at all. So those are bouncing out. That's the way it should look. I think it's one of those things like Mr. O'Sullivan, when he was here, our previous VA, started separating everybody's things so they were all tracked.
Mhm.
If you clump things together as much as you can, it eliminates stuff like this. Like having all those separate setups is what's causing this. So if you were to say all certified staff's insurance, then you don't have to deal with that. It all gets tracked under that. But because there's so many subsets, if it gets billed to the wrong line or set up, it's as long as you know what you're seeing, you can find out where to track it. And then there's entries and journal entries. It's just a lot more work.
I think his assertion at the time is that he was trying to make the chart of accounts to conform to state guidelines, but then additionally, he wanted to be able to track expenses in a finer, more detailed manner. So
That's
it
correct.
sounds like it had this problem.
I think that became a problem, and the fact that, like we've said, we lost most of the people who went into that initial training right after it was set up. So I think that there are things that probably could have been fixed, but because it went through, it's that history where it stays with us for 2 to 3 years until it kind of fixes itself. And then once you fix it, you have the old history to show it, but then once you get, moving forward. So if you turn to page 16, you'll see that there's a positive balance of 32,000 for your OT. That's not correct. That will be paid for out of this and billed back. So the OT is a 70-30 split with Northwood. So that 30% is 30% of everything. So that will get paid for from the SAU, the preschool, and then billed back. And because Northwood's currently paying for it all currently. So that'll be fixed. So what I would say is if you take away that 32,000, everything else looks pretty accurate. You're looking to end the preschool with about a $61,000 savings. And then the final part of the VA report is the attached page 17, the salaried and hourly compensated absences as of the 9th, so February 9th.
So these are carried over from prior years as well, and then accumulated. There probably is a way to break out the prior year cut point. Because I think with Stratford, when we finalize all of that, that will be something that will need to happen.
Yeah, we knew what it was when Stratford left.
Right, okay.
So we knew what it was at that point. So anything in addition would be there. So we can do that. But that's what it is currently. And we can look at what it was when Stratford left, which is part of the separation agreement. I would be happy to take any questions. I might not have the answers for them right now, but I can take any questions on the BA report and see what I can do.
Any questions on the BA report?
I've asked mine. So.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. All
Okay.
right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Burns.
You're welcome.
Ms. LaValle, Student Services Report.
Sure, so the report's in your packet. A few additions to preschool. We did have some tuition students join us. One in January and then 3 more started in February, so that was good. We do still have some openings, so I just say that so that anybody who's interested in preschool can give me a call. But other than that, it's pretty stable numbers. The one note that I wanted to add under preschool was that we have started, as we do every year around this time, planning for the rising kindergartners transitions. So Ms. Brewer and I, each year we develop like a timeline for, the kindergarten team and the preschool teams getting together, talking about students and needs and planning, and it's good to share that information so that when they do their kindergarten screening, they can kind of invite it or follow up with families that we kind of know were planning to come but didn't necessarily sign up for the screening. And so it's a really good process that we've developed over the years, and it starts right about now.
Great.
And for the alt ed program, not very many changes in the enrollment there. A couple of notes under alt ed, just that the DOE has changed some of the pieces of the high set process. So the alt ed facilitator did attend the training with DOE and got all that information, which is great. And he's revising some of his the forms and systems that he uses to support kids that are on that high set path. So that's good. And then just a note, we do have quite a few 11th graders in the alt ed program. So I just noted that we do have on our radar that they're required to take the SAT as part of the statewide assessment. So we're offering that to them, and those who wish to take it, we will help sign them up and just make sure they have a place to take it, whether that's at Co-Brown or one of the high schools, or it's at the alt ed space. And if they don't, then they can opt out. Any questions about either preschool or alt ed?
Like roughly percentage wise, how many of our non-tuition students will go to Nottingham versus Northwood?
For preschool?
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah,
They're
so at the
separate,
top,
yeah.
yeah, it's broken out by
Okay.
district.
Okay.
Okay. Other updates at the bottom. So Co-Brown is going through their 6-year cycle of special ed program approval this year. We met with the DOE over Zoom. They did some file reviews. They did randomly choose 3 special ed files that were Nottingham students, 1 from Northwood and 1 from Barrington. So we spent time last week with the monitoring consultant through DOE. Everything went really well. So they didn't have any findings. I haven't gotten official letters yet, but it all went really well. So that was good. And then the last piece was just a little bit about indicator 13, which is the monitoring that the state does about our post-secondary transition planning for special ed students. So this is part of the IEP. It's the transition section of the IEP. And they used to monitor this on that 6-year cycle per high school. And they just, at the last special ed DOE update, let us know that starting next fall, they're going to completely change the monitor. They're not changing what they're monitoring, they're just changing how they're monitoring it. And they will be doing it annually based on LEA, not on a 6-year cycle based on high school. So that's a pretty significant change for all of us. And they're going to be reviewing a percentage of files for applicable students. So that will be a pretty major change, but it doesn't start until the fall. Any questions?
Just clarify what that will mean. The funding is rolling through my head a little bit. And so these are students that would be Northwood and Nottingham students at Co-Brown or other schools that we tuition into. And the LEA will be working directly on indicator 13.
So indicator 13 is one of the performance plan
Right.
Pieces that the DOE monitors. So they just look at it's reflected in the IEPs. Each IEP has a transition section where you need to do a transition assessment with students and then reflect in the IEP what their goals are for after high school and how you're going to help them work towards those. So the monitoring process is just the DOE coming in and looking at the IEPs to see that they meet those criteria.
So they would be looking at the new SAU in Nottingham, going through,
They're going to be doing it by SAU, not by high school.
okay, perfect. That's where I was.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Ms. LaValle?
Yes, sorry, I
Yeah.
have one more question. So
Sure.
those 5 4-year-old students will definitely go into the kindergarten program that we anticipate that at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we don't specifically ask families
Right.
at this point to make a commitment one way
Right,
or the
right.
other, but so I don't really have a way to know whether
Okay.
they plan to go to a charter school or go to a private school or come to Nottingham. There's no way to
And-
really know that yet.
Like in the past, just
Yeah.
some numbers, the percentage, like when you do your kindergarten evaluation, what do you generally see as a percentage? Is there kind of a steady like amount of kids that would require an IEP that weren't identified prior?
So we don't usually, anybody who's been in preschool, we screen them through their time in preschool. So
Right,
they don't go to the screening clinic and get flagged because
right.
we would know that ahead of time and would address that with the families and
I'm talking
identify
about
them.
like students that are not already identified. Like, do you generally see maybe like 1 or 2, like? I'm just-
So I don't have those numbers. I don't, those screenings are done by the building kindergarten teams and therapy teams, like the speech and language pathologist and the OT and the kindergarten teachers kind of run those clinic settings. So I could
So
look
it's
for
not-
that information, but I don't have that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Thank you very much, Ms. LaValle. Superintendent's report.
Okay, so under personnel, I'll give you an update and the reason I said you're gonna see more savings. So I was bringing Mr. Carlson forward for nomination. He has now told me that he's found a full-time job and his last day with us will be next Thursday. So it's yet another step backwards for us because we were actually starting to make some headway. Having a finance manager, having someone who knew how to do the accounting, going in and changing things. But he was offered and accepted a full-time job. He is giving us his 2-week notice to make sure, as he said he would, so he's gonna honor that. But again, I'll bring him forward for nomination formally, knowing that the hope was that he would stay until the end of the year. My fingers were crossed, but it is actually now his last day will be the 28th. So, and then also bringing forward Pamela Lebrecht for a nomination for part-time receptionist, and this is temporary. This is not to replace the receptionist that is currently working with us. This is to help us because we're short-staffed in the special ed office and we're short-staffed in the BA office, to have her come in a very minimal capacity, maybe once every other week, to help process orders, to help get things done like project-wise that she used to be able to do, because we're trying to get our current receptionist to do more of the special ed component that we lost when Miss Lee left. So this is not this is a very temporary, I don't want to say it is temporary because it's only for the rest of this year, but it's not even a sequence. I can't tell you how many hours. We're going to be looking at when we have projects. It's going to stay well with under budget because she worked with us before, only 4 hours at a time. That's all she wants to do. And she doesn't want to do multiple days a week. So it's just to come in and help us with some of our larger projects to get things done, like our ordering, because our business office is having a hard time keeping up with everything, and to place all the Amazon orders, something that she used to be able to do for us, would just be a better use to have her order it and to try to keep our AP busy when they're processing other things.
Absolutely.
So I would nominate Miss Lebrecht for up, $15.75 an hour, knowing that it would stay, I can't say within budget, but not to expend and put us into a deficit, which as you saw, we're looking at a pretty robust surplus. And then Mr. Carlson, I would like to nominate him at $208.17 per day, up through the 28th of February now.
Make a motion to approve the nominations of Pamela Lebrecht and Ed Carlson.
All right, any discussion?
couple of quick questions. So we'll have two receptionists right now. We've got one really working projects,
That's correct.
and that will be indefinite until the projects are complete.
Yeah, I'm looking at 1 to 2 days a week, 4 hours each time, for as much as she's willing to come in and help us.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Abstentions? All right, that motion passes. What do we have? 9 of us, 9 to 0.
I think it's 8.
8, sorry, thank you. All of a sudden I'm like, that's not 9.
Exactly, yeah, I do the same thing.
All
So-
right.
Under correspondence, I don't have any major correspondence. It kind of lays into the update for the audit. You did see a letter. I asked Mr. Campo to provide us an update, and he is stating that he is hoping to have the audit completely done and the report sent by the end of February. I've not had another update since then, so I believe we're still on track for that. And so that would be under correspondence. Your update for the Stratford separation agreement, that was sent out after our previous meeting to legal. I have touched base with legal, and with all of the deliberative sessions and all the planning for everything else, he has said he's worked on it. And he said he was sending it over to Stratford, and that's the last I had heard from our legal. So I'll be confirming with him that it was sent, but he has it. I updated it per the board's request, sent it out, and now I'm just waiting to hear back from Mr. Graham on what their answers are to what we proposed.
But at this point, he hasn't finished his work and it's not been given to Stratford yet.
That's my understanding, yes. He said he would have it out very shortly. And that's everything that I have at this point. I'll take any questions that you may have.
Do you want to do an update on the audit?
That was in the letter. It's
In
just,
just the letter,
yeah,
yeah.
just that I'm
Perfect.
expecting that the audit will be closed by the end of February. We've been providing them with every material that they ask as they come up. If anything else comes up, we do get it over to them.
Great. All right, any questions for Mr. Byrne, superintendent's report? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Byrne. All right, any other items that we need to discuss this evening? All right, then we can move on to our transition committee, structuring committee updates. Nottingham, do you all want to go first?
We're working on software right now, and our location is underway, and we'll be working with the Board of Selectmen on an agreement around that. That's pretty much it. Anybody have anything? Anything else?
Started the superintendent
Yeah,
hiring.
the search, yeah, we're gonna be. We have
Great.
applicants for that. We'll be working on that, so we are busy.
Great. Brian, you want to give a report for?
There's, I mean, no news from Northwood. We've gone through the deliberative and, without any amendments or anything. So our budget that we proposed, the school board, the budget committees made no changes to it, and then the deliberative session made no changes to it. So, so that's about it. That's where we're at.
Chugging along.
Chugging along.
All right, so now we can move into our future meeting agenda items. I have jotted down from this meeting that we're going to go back and review the January 10th minutes and fill in the gaps there. And it sounds like both Mr. Byrne and Ms. Levinson have some notes that they can compare and contrast, so we can have hopefully a closer to full set of minutes. And then also I have the computer module costs. So if we can take a look at the iVisions costs, that would be great. Anything else? Future meeting agenda?
Policy piece. I
Yes,
guess.
the policy piece. We should have an update on that. I'll send out an email this week.
And we'll, I guess we'll have to take up the standing separation agreement.
Yeah, we'll leave that on there. Anything else?
I have a question just on the personnel piece. So in the next 2 weeks, with the finance manager in the building, what would be the priority and what outcomes would you be looking to have closed?
So I have them looking at all of the encumbrances and for all the districts, for both districts, I have them looking at our contracts because what I'm seeing is we were double encumbered on certain things and then they would release it. The billing wasn't billed back correctly, so I'm having them structure the bill backs and looking at the high school tuition agreements, making sure that those are more up to date because they weren't being billed on the large payments. So for instance, North Nottingham would normally put a couple small payments in the Dover, and then we get the larger bills and break it up over
Yep.
the 9 months. Well, that hasn't been done yet. So we got to figure out what that bill is going to be so I can give you a better, so I can give Nottingham a more accurate tuition cost. Because we budget, and I don't have the number in front of me, we budget for X amount of students, but you have X plus like 7 more. So that's a larger number. And right now we're saying it's 0. They're just saying, okay, whatever we budgeted, that's the number that we're gonna, but that's not correct. I said, I need you to actually come up with what the tuition is going to be at the end of the year. And knowing it's a moving target, it could change, but I at least want you to see it what it is now. And that's one of the things I'm looking at. Also making sure that we get all of our ACH file stuff done for the IRS and designating who would be the people to do that. I've tried to stay out of that because that is not my role, but with Ed leaving, my name's gonna have to be added to that now. So I'm gonna have to figure out how to get certified in ACH for the IRS stuff. You have to have 2 people.
So that was the issue that we had last year when Dr. Henson was here, and I don't know that we ever really heard that there was gonna be an issue, but apparently nothing yet.
Right. There isn't one because they assigned it to other people, but now we need to get it set up for future years. So that's one of the things. So really I have them going through the financials and I've been meeting with Miss Osborne and Mr. Carlson each day to go over the financials. I have them reprint, say, okay, I see this, can you fix this, find this answer for me? And then we meet again after they've done some of that. And so that's going to be the process over the next 2 weeks with him here is every day we're going to tackle the financials and do a little bit more of the reconciling and trying to figure out what's going on. For instance, looking at the high school lines, when you have schools outside of our traditional schools, what number is that supposed to hit and making sure that it's hitting that line correctly.
So that the fact that we have a student or 2 at other schools.
Portsmouth, you're right.
Portsmouth, or,
Yeah,
okay.
so that he came to me with those questions and I was like, no, this is the line. It's the Dover line that it gets filled out of. So doing that, it's that stuff every day. It's probably about an hour a day that we go over and then they go back and set that up and go through it.
The employee bill backs, will that be, do you think that would be part of the project in the 2 weeks or just the
No,
contract?
that's part of the project.
With the, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've asked for that to be cleared up.
And Mr. Ford, I know he doesn't, want to come in and do journal entries or anything, but is he doing any roll forwards or any reconciliations so that
He will be looking at those again. Now that I'd taken him off of that because we had someone come in.
Yep.
But now that we're losing that individual, I'll be reaching back out to him now that deliberatives are all over and say, hey, I could use you to look at the accounts and see what you can find for us. And he did that before.
so he'll look at by line and try to correct them.
He won't correct them. He'll tell us.
He'll
what
tell
he
us,
sees.
tell you
Yeah.
how to
Yes.
correct it. Okay.
Great, anything else? All right, our next meeting is set for Monday, March 14th. And do we have a need for non-public?
I would like to go in under, just real briefly, under L and just give you an update on the pending litigation against SAU 44.
Okay.
And that will be brief.
I'll move that we enter non-public under RSA 91A:3, paragraph 2L.
I'll second that.